Morning, and my goodness, it really is morning. I've got bright and early because I want to try and put in as many miles as I can in this car today. And the reason is because there's a question that I've had that I'm in the perfect position now to answer, and that is, do I spend my money on a brand new 2018 Nissan Leaf, Hyundai Ioniq, maybe wait for the Kona, the full electric Kona to come along? Or do I take a similar amount of money and spend it on a high mileage, this one's done 114,000 miles, 4-year-old Tesla Model S? What's the best thing to do? I'm hoping that by the end of today, I can answer that question. The reason I want to do so many miles in this car is to get away from that initial wow factor that I had the first time I saw and sat in this car. The layout, the look of it feels very luxurious, it feels very futuristic. It really appeals to me. But I wanted to get away from all that. I want to do lots of miles so that I get a true feeling for what this car will be like, not just after a week of driving it, but after 6 months, 12 months, 3 years of driving it. What are the things that are going to really bother me? The niggles, the things that I might not be able to put up with? Or indeed, are there any? Is this truly a luxurious car that will last and last and last? So far I've done nearly 400 miles and I'm starting to get a feel for what the car's like without my rose-tinted glasses on. And let's start with the inside. Let me take you through what I've found so far and what I think is good and bad. And let's just talk through that and then we'll work around the rest of the car. So I'm going to find somewhere to pull over and we'll do that properly. Now I've had a chance to sit in here for a while, I've noticed all those little niggly things. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with those negative points, but believe me, there's a lot of positives. So let's just get the negatives out the way. So the first thing I noticed when I got into this car, and the aircon came on, it's very hot here at the moment. I don't know if you can hear it, just have a listen. There's a noise that sounds like an idling engine, and that is basically the aircon. Now, whether it's the fan or the refrigeration unit or how it works, I don't know, but it makes that noise. And when you're sat in traffic, it sounds like you're sat in an idling ice car. Now, you might say, well, that doesn't matter, does it, surely? But I've come from a car that is absolutely silent at standstill. And my 3-year-old Nissan Leaf that cost a fraction of this, I don't get that noise from the aircon, and I don't like it. I like the silence of an electric vehicle. So that was the first thing I noticed. And to be fair, it comes and goes. It depends how hard you're using the aircon, if you're moving, not moving, it does come and go. So it's not there all the time. The second thing I noticed was the dash, and it's a bit flimsy. This top piece, it looks lovely, leather, stitched. It feels a little bit flimsy, which again, not a big thing because you're not going to go along wiggling the dash all the time. But the fact I know that is there like that, it bothers me. There's also another noise that bothers me, and it comes from the back of the car. As I'm driving, if I'm accelerating, there's a whining noise. It sounds, and I may be wrong, it sounds like the motor is whining as you're putting load on it. If I lift off the accelerator, the noise goes away. Do you know what that is? Is that a common problem? Let me know if that's something that other people talk about or whether it's very specific to this car. But again, it's a noise that annoys me that I don't get in my 3-year-old Leaf. So I wouldn't expect it to be in here. So that's another little thing. And the final thing that's bothered me is the windscreen wipers. This might sound really petty, but I think we have to remember that this car came from an era of Tesla being very new and trying to get luxurious cars on the market. They didn't have a big, long, decades of history of building cars and finessing every little detail. So I would imagine most of their R&D time was spent on the look of this car, the technology that's gone into it, how to make it the best possible road-going car it can. When it came to things like windscreen wipers, I'm guessing to them it was a set of windscreen wipers. Pop them on, we'll worry about finessing that later. And that's the key to it. They haven't been finessed. They feel like quite old-fashioned, if I'm honest. If I hit the spray, half the spray jets are blocked by the windscreen wiper, and then they don't feel very refined when they're being used. Very minor points, I know, but bear in mind we are still paying a premium for a car even with this mileage. And that brings me on to, let's not get too bogged down in some of the nitty-gritty of it. This is a 4-year-old car that's done 114,000 miles. It's never had a single owner, if that makes sense. It's always been one of these cars that every week somebody else drives. It's not a hire car, but very similar to that. So of course it's not been looked after as if it was owned by one single person. So there's going to be a few things. But that brings me on to the flip side. And the flip side is, bearing that in mind, actually the inside here is held up remarkably well. There are no scratches in the interior, there's no marks, there's no stains, there's nothing. It's held up really, really well. So that's testament to the build quality of the components they've put inside here. As I said before, I love all this technology in here, and this is a kind of, for me, the big selling point. How easily this is laid out and how intuitive it is to use. My kids got in here and they were able to use this pad thing without any issues at all. They were navigating their way around. It's very much like the first time, I guess, you get an Apple iPad. Within minutes, you've kind of sussed it out because it is so intuitive. So the overall feel of this car inside is one of very, very high quality. And it does feel like a car that's been built to sit in that luxury market. And it's just a really nice place to be in here. What about the exterior then? This is one area that I have seen an awful lot in the press about. You can't help but see it. And that's around the build quality of the door panels, the gaps, everything about the exterior of these Teslas that we see all the time, all over the internet, saying how poorly they're put together. So with that in mind, I've walked around this with a fine-tooth comb. And I have to say that the gapping and the way the panels are laid out and everything about this is absolutely spot on. I cannot find anything wrong with it apart from one very small area. And if I hadn't have been going around it like I did, I wouldn't have even seen it. It wouldn't even cross my mind. And that's just on this driver's door where it meets the pillar. It's probably sat a millimetre out of alignment. I've also had a little look around the car park at other cars while I was doing it. And there's several other cars of various brands in there that look exactly the same. So yes, it has been an issue. And yes, a lot has been made of it, but I don't know that it is as bad as a lot of people make out. So be aware of it, have a look around any car that you happen to be looking at, but don't get too hung up on it. Don't not look at them because of it, if that makes sense. So the paintwork and everything else about it, again, considering its mileage and the way it's been treated, is spot on. I've got no complaints whatsoever, and it is very, very good. So why? Why would you look at anything else other than one of these? Why wouldn't you put yourself in true luxury with all the gadgets and that real wow factor? Why not buy a Volkswagen or a Nissan or a Hyundai? What's the point in going and spending your money on one of those? Well, there probably is quite a good reason for doing it. And there's several ways to look at it. The first is you get a brand new car with a warranty on it. So that's obviously this sort of mileage, this sort of age, you can pretty much, you're on your own with this. And also, if we're looking at the kind of money that this car would cost you, well, then you're looking at top of the range Nissan Leaf, top of the range Hyundai Ioniq. And look at the gadgets and the extras that you get on that. This car has got cruise control. It's got no autopilot, it hasn't got anything else. Those cars come with Pro Pilot and other, whatever it's called in that car, lane assist, adaptive cruise control, they come with all these extra features. The Ioniq has got air-conditioned seats. This one hasn't got that. So you start adding all these little things up. You start to think, well, actually, is my money better invested in that new car? Because as we've seen at the moment, the resale values are really holding well. So what has this got over those? Why would you choose one of these? Well, I've been tossing this idea around in my head for probably the last 24 hours, and it really comes down to personal choice. And for me, it is, what rules? Is it your head or your heart? And I'm really struggling on this one because my heart is really dragging me towards one of these, simply because that initial wow factor I had when I got into this car. I've never got into a car and felt, I guess, as special as I did when I got into this. Now, I'm not counting these ridiculous supercars. What I'm talking about is cars that realistically I could drive. And this has got something about it that no other car has got. And having driven it, that huge grin factor of the performance this has got. Now, don't get me wrong, this hasn't got the handling of a 5 Series, but it's not far off. But that 0 to 60 and that 30 or 40 mile an hour to 60 overtake, I've never driven anything like it. It is so, so fast. So that warm feeling, that grin factor, that my heart is leading me towards, this is the car for me. But of course, when you buy a car, you don't just buy it because you're interested. Very happy lady on her bike. You don't just buy it because you're interested. You buy it, certainly for me, as a family. So in order to help me make my decision, let's speak to some of my family and, well, have a look for yourself, see what their reactions are to this car.
Annabelle, look at the front. Look, there really is a tablet. Oh, cool. I think all of my boys, the boys in my class, will be so jealous of me. Oh, this is a nice little thing. Come on. Oh, that's better. Hello. Annabelle, look what I get. Little camera. What will I get? Daddy, look, I get a little camera. Little one. Little one. Hello, camera.
Okay, you ready?
I'm ready. This is gonna be scary.
What do you think, Annabelle?
It's so nice. It's really comfortable too. Go turbo boost.
We're coming to a little bridge and a bend in the road.
Turbo boost. Turbo boost.
We'll crash.
No point. Turbo boost.
You ready?
Yes.
Sit up straight. Ready?
Yeah. Oh, that was so fun. Can we do it again after, please?
Okay, wait till there's another gap in the road.
Yay! It was so fun. Look at it, Thomas. It's like a roller coaster. I know. It was like the fastest roller coaster in the world. And like the fastest car. Yeah. I really did! My head was backwards. That's so much fun. Can we do it again when there's another gap, please? Another way.
So you like it then?
Yes. Yeah. I want to keep this car.
Yeah, me too, Thomas. But
So do I. Daddy, do you want to see something? He wants to talk to you. When he wants to talk to you. Hello, Daddy. I am Mr. Needy.
hello, Thomas is neat.
And I want to have a chat with you.
What do you want to chat about?
Can we get a new Tesla?
Yes, we can. Are you prepared to put some money towards it, Thomas is neat?
Yes.
Where are you going to get your money from?
Thomas's piggy bank. I've not got any money, so I don't know.
No,
I can't
right.
steal it off the bank. Daddy, can we do that turbo boost again, please?
What, like this? Well, there you go. Thomas says we're going to buy it. He absolutely loved it. And that shows you it's that childish nature inside us that wants this flash-looking, high-performance, great fun item. And we wouldn't want to be without it. That very much is your heart talking. Unfortunately, my head rules me. It always has done. And that sensible side is fighting back. And it's saying to me, why would you buy a car that is got so many miles on it? I appreciate it can do an awful lot more than what it's got on here, but it's from, at the moment, still a kind of an unproven manufacturer that wants an awful lot of money for a second-hand car when I can get a brand new car with additional features on it. Okay, it's not a head turner, it hasn't got the performance, but do I need all that? I'm being dragged back towards it, I must admit. At this point in time, I think, for me, a Nissan Leaf, Hyundai, whatever, one of those family cars that I could afford, I think I'm being dragged back towards it. And that's not to say that's not going to change in the future. I think at the moment, for the money that these cars command, you can get more for your money, taking away that wow factor. You can get more for your money in the likes of a Nissan Leaf than you can in this. But let's go forward several years and let's be honest, the cars that I'm looking at the moment in the Tesla range that I think, well, that would take me, are still in the region of second-hand £50,000. Well, those prices are only going to keep falling. So, you know, hold on for a bit. Actually, you might get something beyond one of their original ones, which had all those little teething problems, and very much one that has had all that ironed out. So it's not a no, a complete no, but it's maybe it's a little bit too early yet. So that's kind of where I am. But that said, this has been an awful lot of fun and a real eye-opener for me. I never thought that in any way, shape or form could I afford to drive or own a Tesla of any description. Well, clearly it would be a push, but it's not beyond the realms of possibility. So let's I'm certainly going to keep an eye out in the future, and hopefully that's given you a bit of an insight into maybe not necessarily your thinking, but my chain of thought and how I've got to where I am. But for now, I'm going to thoroughly enjoy the next few days in this car, and probably in the future still look at one of these, maybe a Model 3 in 5 years' time when they become a lot more affordable for me. But yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed that. If you have, remember to like and share. If you're not doing so already, subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to have a look at Patreon if you'd like to support the channel. But for now, thanks ever so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Take care.